Welcome to the Next Level podcast, powered by Manuel, a series connecting you with the best minds in casino, hospitality, tribal government, and beyond. Enjoy the show.
Hello. Today we have Allison Salotti, our Director of Marketing Services, joining us for Next Level. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's been a long time in the making. So as you know, we always start this podcast with a 3-minute origin story, where you grew up, your interests, career path, and what got you to where you're at today.
Sure. So I grew up in Orchid, California, which is about an hour north of Santa Barbara, just outside of Santa Maria. I played sports growing up, so I was heavily into soccer. I was a gymnast, even though I was 5'10", so that career didn't last very long. And then I eventually made my way into playing volleyball. That led me to go to the University of La Verne, and I played volleyball for the University of La Verne. So I made my way down to Southern California. From there, I worked right out of college for a minor league baseball team. It was my internship out of college, and then I got hired on full time. So I was there for 3 seasons. I was with the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes.
Nice.
And then the company got bought out, and we all got let go. So I decided to go back to school. I went back to the University of La Verne, and I got my MBA with an emphasis in marketing. And then I worked on campus for a grant, and it was a 5-year grant. So I knew that there was an end to that. So I started to look for other jobs. And while I was coaching club volleyball, I ran into somebody that was in HR for what was Samuel Casino at the time, is now Yuhaaviatam. And she said, "We're hiring for marketing." So I looked into it, and I made my way to the casino. So I got hired on. This was it'll be 12 years ago in July. So it's about 11 and a half years ago. And I was in marketing as a specialist, worked my way into database marketing for a long time, took a little pivot to casino communications, executive communications.
Where we got to work together.
And then I'm now on the brand marketing team as the Director of Marketing Services.
Nice. So you have a diverse background, and from sports to marketing. What actually made you pursue the degree in marketing? Was there a pivotal moment that made you think, like, this is a trajectory I want to take?
So I was really into creative. During my undergrad, I was a communications multimedia major. I was really into graphic design. And I was also into photography. I'd still dabble here and there. But I think I realized that I was too curious about the why. And so as I was utilizing those skills early on in my career, I realized I really wanted to understand the strategy behind why we were creating what we were creating. So I wouldn't say there was like one defining moment. I think my curiosity kind of just drove me naturally into that, more of the marketing on the business side of everything. And so with that, I definitely went a little bit further away from creative than I thought I would. I was in database marketing for almost 9 years. So I was on the data side. And then, everything happens for a reason. And now I'm back overseeing a creative team. So it was very, very much full circle. But I think there was just a natural progression based off of my curiosity and wanting to learn the why behind why we do things.
So I have 2 questions. I'm going to start with the first one being, can you tell us a little bit about what marketing services looks like, the areas that your department oversees, and how that plays into the big picture for both Yuhaaviatam and the Yuhaaviatam of San Manuel Nation?
Sure. So my department is brand marketing, and mine for marketing services specifically has all of our graphic designers, our interactive designers, our photographers, our videographers, and then we also have a production team. So they take everything that's created and works with our vendors, traffics all of our creative. And then we have a whole team of our account executives, which are project managers for all of the accounts. And so we are considered a shared values department. So we do creative for Yamava, for the Palms, for Yuhaaviatam of San Manuel Nation, for all of their tribal assets that they need. And then we also are starting to work with Monarch and Waldorf. So we basically are that internal agency that services all of the different tribal assets.
And I know earlier you said like creativity was huge for you in your paths, right? How do you, within your work environment, create that creative environment and make people feel empowered to do their best work and also think from a strategic lens at the same time?
So what I've learned is making sure people know the why behind why we're doing things, right? And so I try to be as transparent as possible when it's available to do that, so that even as a creative, if they know the why behind it, the creativity tends to fall naturally because they're understanding the reason why they're creating what they're doing. And so with that, I think also staying open to new ideas from them and building that trust really empowers them to do well, but also, talk to their leadership and bring ideas for things because they're understanding why we're doing it. So I do think that by building that trust and building, keeping that transparency, it helps the team be really successful.
I definitely agree. I think it's the explaining the why and the trust that really helps people think outside the box and feel comfortable doing so and not being judged, and understanding some of their ideas may stick and others may not, but it's just getting those creative juices going and that curiosity. So
definitely. And I want people to think outside the box. I want them to bring our craziest ideas, because you just never know what actually will stick, because sometimes it's those ideas that are what we end up running with.
And speaking of just crazy ideas, there's so many different trends and things going on in the world, especially in the marketing world. What has captured your attention recently and why?
So I'm going to use the words, if you will, but AI is huge, right? And I think that there are a lot of benefits to AI, and everyone dabbles with it in their own way. But I do believe that it's more of a support, not something that gives you your final outcome. It helps you get there maybe quicker, but I do see this trend of utilizing it in a way that replaces instead of supports. And it's not the best way to go about it. I've learned, especially in the creative world, you still have to have, somebody,
human element.
that human element. Yeah. And I think that, there are some great tools out there that are considered AI tools that I want people to use, but I also don't want AI to be used as such a crutch that it's replacing the things that we're doing, because it doesn't quite hit the mark every time, right? You have to have that human touch. So it's definitely a shift that we all have to adapt to, but also educate people on with how to utilize it correctly, so that we don't get ourselves into a bind with something that doesn't really make sense.
No, that's understandable. How do you also personally and with your team stay innovative in an industry that continually evolves so fast?
Yeah, so I think for me, I'm not one that goes out and reads all of these things about what's going on in the world as far as what's next in marketing. I just am a big listener. I like listening to everybody's experiences, because you never know. Everybody has a different perspective on what's going on. And if you're listening to them, you're understanding what's important to them, right? And so if you're constantly just actively listening and paying attention, sometimes being a fly on the wall on conversations, and in a way that you're like, oh, I would have never thought about that way, or I didn't know people were interested in that. Yeah. And then I'll go down that rabbit hole of researching what they're talking about. But really interacting with people, building those relationships and talking and understanding what people find important, I think is what's really helped me stay, on top of what's new and exciting right now.
Well, I think it goes all back to even speaking on AI, we still need that human element, those experiences, those moments that people are going to remember, and that is really going to move the mark, right? In whatever we're doing. So
definitely.
Shifting gears a little bit, What's a lesson from early in your career that still guides your decision making today?
So I think the one that really sticks with me is not being a no person, being a solution-based person. I don't want, to come into something and go, oh, we can't do that, but not give anything else behind it. Right. And so I think I had leadership that taught me that early on. And I felt like it was such a key to my success within my career, because instead of coming in with a problem or we can't do this, I'd say, okay, so this isn't possible, but we can accomplish X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And I've really tried to also hone that in with my own team, just to understand, like, let's come up with solutions. It might not be exactly what everybody thought it would be, but we can come up with a happy medium that gets us to the ultimate goal. So I would say, don't be not being a no person and being a solution-based person is definitely something that stuck with me.
No, and I think that's so important, because even being on the receiving side sometimes of that, I think when you come in automatically with a no and not the solution, people shut down, they're not listening, and they don't want to come to you next time, right? So it's creating that relationship and like problem solving and brainstorming together sometimes that really helps everyone kind of go back to thinking outside the box and coming up with new ideas. We challenge one another by being able to do so, right? Which
also builds trust, right? And so if they trust that they can bring you an idea and you can execute it in some way, because you're like, okay, maybe the pie in the sky wasn't able to be done, but like she brought this, like there's a trust that gets built, and those relationships really get built in a good way.
And speaking of relationships, who were the people that made the biggest impact on your professional journey, and what exactly did they teach you? What are those little nuggets you learned along the way?
So I had a director who then became my VP early on, and she was tough, but like in a good way. I felt like she challenged me quite a bit, and it really helped me expand my knowledge and not be so narrow-minded about what I was doing, because she was constantly challenging me. But I go back to that not being a no person. She was also the one that really, I vividly remember walking into her office, and I was like, oh no, this happened. And she goes, so what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, that's a great question. And so the next time I went in, I was like, hey, this happened, but we're doing this, this, and this. And she's like, see? And so I felt like her constantly challenging me to think outside the box and be more strategic with how I was approaching a situation was really key early on in my career. I definitely like it. It's something I look back on, and every time somebody asks me about it, like I think about her and how that challenge really helped me rise above it and like become more strategic in how I approach things.
I think sometimes as a leader, it's the asking the questions, and you help others find the answer by just asking the questions that they start thinking, and then the answer is right in front of them, but they just need to be guided.
Yeah. To it. I just had that conversation the other day. I was like, I'm asking questions because I know you can get there. Like, I don't want to always give you the answer, because I don't always have the answer. Sometimes me asking the questions helps prompt both of us, right?
So yeah, definitely. How has mentorship, either formal or informal, played a role in your development? And what are your thoughts on being a mentor to other people?
So I've never really had somebody I've said is like my formal mentor. I definitely think that building relationships with different people has been key in my career. I do think that different people throughout my career have been able to help guide me in different ways, and I've leaned on them in different situations. Sometimes it's within my vertical, sometimes it's a completely different outside perspective. And so I still consider those mentorships, if you will, because I think that having those outside perspectives, or having the perspective within your own vertical, is key in those situations. And so having people that you trust to be open and honest with and really brainstorm with, or come with wanting advice, I do think it's really important to have those people in your life. And then in the opposite end, I really enjoy when people come to me and are really looking for that. I feel like their wins are my wins in those moments, because I get to see them grow. So it's been really awesome to like get to this point in my career. And even people that maybe I was their leader like years ago, they'll still pop in and come and talk to me. And I feel like those moments I'm so grateful for that we've been able to build that, and I've been able to help get them to their, help them grow, if you will.
Yeah, and you touched on relationship building. And I think that whether it's in your current department or any departments here, I think just the relationship building on any level is so crucial, because a large part of our organization and our success is from collaborating really with other people and building those relationships, either with our internal stakeholders or even with our partners and vendors, right? The relationship building is huge.
Oh yeah. I think one of the things I'm really grateful for, and not to completely take this in another direction, but when I went into casino executive comms, it was a completely different lane for me, but it actually really opened up this the door for me to interact with more people across the enterprise. And I'm so grateful for that experience, because I now have relationships with people in other departments that I would have never had before. And it's even helped me now coming back, into this brand marketing role with having those connections and being able to like call food and beverage for these, and they know me and I know them. And it's just, it's really, those relationships really matter. And I'm so grateful for that, for sure.
And you just mentioned that, you went into new roles, right? And like the executive comms was outside of your trajectory and pattern you probably were thinking about. But no matter where you've been and what roles you've had, what principles have helped guide you along your journey?
I would say really just being adaptable to different personalities, different environments, being open to new things. That's really helped me. I go back to, really soaking in and listening to the people around you, understanding the goals of your role or for your department. I think that, and I learned that a lot in that transition, because I had been in the same department for almost 9 years, that, it was uncomfortable, right? You're so used to your usual day in and day out that being uncomfortable was probably the best thing. But really listening to people and soaking in what they're saying and understanding how you can support them is really like something that I feel like you have to do when you go into that new role. I do think making those transitions is hard, and also knowing where the people that you're working with need the support right away. So that's something, as I transitioned back, I really wanted to meet, or back into marketing, but into brand. I met with everybody. I talked to everybody. I wanted to understand, what their goals were and how they felt they needed leadership and support. So actively listening is a really big thing, and then communicating really well. But I think that adapting to your environment and being able to listen and actively listen is huge.
And I think like no matter what you're doing, just the with our organization at moving so fast, you have to really take the time and connect with your people, because the power of connection is so huge, especially when we're having to be flexible and pivot and, really come up with these new ideas to stay ahead. Listening and meeting with folks is so crucial.
Agreed. I completely agree.
Is there any habits that you have outside of listening that have helped you transition in your different phases?
Yeah, I always joke I'm really chatty.
I'm laughing because I remember you've said that a couple times.
Honestly, I do have to remember sometimes there are situations where like I don't need to be the one talking, and so I've gotten so much better at that. But honestly, I like making people feel comfortable. I've always been like that since I was a kid. I don't want people to feel awkward. So I naturally just talk to people and find common ground that I've just kind of naturally progressed into making people feel comfortable. And I pride myself in that. I never really meant to be that person, but I realized over time, I'm like, wow, people do like to just come and talk to me and they're comfortable. And I think like when you build that, it goes back to building trust and they know I'm listening to them. And so I would say being chatty has really helped me. But
No, I
really
think
finding that common ground has been helpful.
and I think it's even beyond like being chatty. I was like,
I say
I
it that
think
way, but I just like talking and interacting and really developing like relationships with people.
And that's what I was going to say. I think it all comes back to people feeling comfortable coming to talk to you. It is building that trust, because that's sometimes how you identify issues that you didn't even know existed. And then you can help kind of help other people's voices be heard and be on the resolving side, so that we can move past whatever may be going on and go in the right direction and work together and form bonds.
Oh, yeah.
It's so important, especially when you're in a creative environment, because you want people to have that trust, that comfortability to kind of stretch their thinking and, just whiteboard and come up with different things. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What belief about leadership have you evolved the most over the past 10 years, and what has influenced that shift?
So I think like early on in my career, I just had this idea, like my leaders were the decision makers, I was support. But I think really it comes down to that we're all a team. And so I've been in team environments my entire life, from sports to now. And
Yeah.
I think where I've really evolved is, trusting that, you have people in positions that are good at their jobs. They can do their jobs. I want to support them without micromanaging them.
Right.
And so I think it's kind of evolved from feeling like, oh, they're just the decision makers, to no, they're the support, right? Like I'm supporting you. I don't have to tell you how to do your job every day. I think, people are great at what they do. And it's really trusting them to come to me when there's a problem, or being able to notice when there's a problem and jump in and help, but not micromanage in that moment. And so it's definitely evolved. My thought, before, when I was in, early, was, oh, I got to run everything by them, and they make the decisions and all this stuff. And it's really more of a team environment. We're all working together for that ultimate goal.
And I think it's being able to delegate and then just kind of sit back, and people coming to you with the questions and you helping to figure out the answers. Or if they do make a mistake along the way, it's helping them learn from that and just continually improve, right?
Yeah, I never want people to feel like they can't make mistakes. That's been something I used to worry about it. Even as a young kid, I'm like, I have to have good grades. I don't want to make a mistake.
Yes.
And that was just the pressure I put on myself. But really, like, that's how we learn, right? And so I definitely want people to feel comfortable that it's okay when it happens, and we learn from it and grow from it.
We'll get through it together.
We'll get through it together. Yeah.
It goes all back to that team dynamic, right?
Definitely.
Looking back across your career, what experiences most shaped your personal philosophy as a leader and marketer?
Experiences. I mean, I've kind of answered this a little bit, but it's really, I go back to being in a team environment, that being part of a team really early on in my life. I mean, I was in soccer at 5 years old, and so it's like, I've always had this idea that you can lean on your team, and your coaches are your leaders, right? But they're trusting you to do your thing. And I've coached before, and so I think just those influences moving into my career, and keeping that as like the top of mind, that, not one person should be doing everything. It's, to your point, delegating and making sure everyone feels empowered to make decisions where they can, and do their job well, and praise them when they do it. I think that's all just kind of naturally gotten me to how I lead today.
Was there a defining moment in your career that gave you confidence in your ability to lead at a higher level?
Yeah, I think it's when people started to come to me as more of a mentor. I definitely think that when that transition started to happen, and I mean, people just naturally started to ask me for advice or want to talk about career growth, it started to form in my mind. I'm like, I'm ready for that, right? I'm ready to lead at a higher level and help other people grow. I think there was some defining moments that were harder than others, right? Like not getting a leadership role when I thought I was ready. that
Right.
definitely feeds into it. And so I think in that moment where it was one of the harder things to go through, I learned so much from it and realized where I still needed to grow. And so I do think that that was a little bit of a defining moment. It felt negative at the time. I think it was one of the best things that happened to me in my career to get me on the right path of where I really was supposed to be. But I would say those two moments, right? That when people came to me, started asking me for help with career growth, and then going through a little bit of a harder transition when I thought I was ready for something and I didn't get the position. And so then where do you go from there,
Where to go
right?
from there. Well, I think like in that example that you gave, I think that what makes you different and really helped you is in moments like that, instead of dwelling and going on a negative path, is seeking the opportunity from that, and then going out and challenging yourself, right? So that
Oh
when the
yeah,
opportunity when the role comes up next time, you're ready for it, right? Whereas,
definitely.
yeah, so I think that's the huge thing. I think sometimes people dwell instead of thinking like, what can I do, and empowering themselves. So
I think in that moment, I definitely I looked at it and I said, okay, there was something I was missing. So what is it that I can do to get myself ready the next time? And
mhm.
then, you know, being with Yamava at the time, we were growing with a lot of different things that were happening. So I was just inserting myself into projects and really like expanding my knowledge. I'm like, you know what? I want to learn everything I possibly
Everything.
can.
Yeah.
And that way, the next time I've expanded, I've worked on things. I just took it as like a challenge. I'm like, all right, next time I'm going to learn whatever I can. I'm going to be ready. I'm going to, have check all the boxes that they feel like I need. And I wanted to, I was so happy to do it. So yeah,
Yeah.
not dwelling was definitely key to moving through it.
And speaking of just roles and opportunities and interviews and things like that, when you're looking for someone to fill a role in your department, what are the key things that you're looking for? The characteristics in that person.
I definitely want somebody that knows how they learn. So I know that sounds a little bit odd, but if you know how you learn, then you can be taught almost anything in my mind. So I think that, if I come to you and I say, if I'm giving you a new program, how do you prefer to learn that program? And they have like a good, detailed answer. I think that's key, especially at some of these, in some of these positions where you're not expected to know everything coming in, right? And we're okay with teaching. And so, knowing how they learn, somebody who wants to collaborate, I think collaboration is key to honestly being successful across the board. We have so many things going on at all times, and collaborating and communicating are definitely at the top of what I'm looking for. Communicating is huge. I think we should over communicate more than under communicate, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you feel like you're communicating well and you're like, why isn't this happening? It's like, you really didn't communicate everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think in those moments when I'm looking for it, I want somebody that, knows how they learn, knows how to communicate, is, excited to collaborate with others and really be a team player.
Nice. Okay, shifting gears a little bit. What has been your most meaningful professional challenge, and what did you learn about yourself through it?
Yeah, that definitely goes back to not getting a director position when I thought I was ready for it. And to be completely honest, I definitely thought I was ready. I understood why I didn't get it. And now I look back and I wasn't supposed to. Like, I look back at my career from then on, and it really allowed me to open my mind into like where I really wanted to be in marketing, which
Mhm.
full circle put me back into more of the creative role. And I think that in the moment it was a hard thing to go through, but when I look back on my career, I made a pivot to the communications side that I didn't think was something I would do, and that really helped hone in some skills and some strategy that I was missing, and then really allowed me to make my way back onto the creative side, and in brand marketing, bring that strategy that I feel like I could bring to the table. And so it was not great that, in the beginning when I was like, I don't understand. And to what I said earlier, I just wanted to learn more and, expand my knowledge so that it wasn't ever going to be, something I was worried about. I wanted to be ready. And so I was, and when it came out, like when this position opened up that I'm in now, I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I was so excited, and it all happens for a reason.
So speaking of excitement and happiness, what has been your biggest accomplishment personally, and then also your most memorable moment in your journey here at enterprise level?
Oh, happiest moment personally. I think on a personal level, when before my husband and I got married, we were able to, buy a house and really be in a better place. I felt like I was like adulting, and it felt very good to make some of these big milestones that, when you buy your first new car, right? It's like those kinds of milestones, but like really having my house and a home for my husband and I and our dogs, like it felt so, I don't know, it was like such a happy moment, and I felt like, wow, like we're solid and we're able to provide, and knowing that I was able to help provide for our family and have that as a big milestone was huge. Professionally, I definitely think getting my current role was like, it felt so good. I've always felt good getting a new role, but this one, I definitely felt like this is where I'm supposed to be. And when I first started with the company, marketing was so broad. It was like one big department. And so I was working with a lot of people that I'm now working with again in that full circle moment, and really being on the creative side. It felt like coming home in like a weird way, but this has probably been one of the best moments.
I love it. And when you look ahead, what type of impact do you hope your leadership has on people, on brands, or on the industry?
So of course I want to make an impact on the enterprise and the decisions I make and along the way, but I think that people are the most important in my mind. And I want to look back on my career, and I want people to, look at me as a leader in a positive way, and that they were able to learn and grow from me and feel like I was supporting them. I do think, we're molding the next generation of leaders. And I find joy is when people that I'm leading are growing and learning. I definitely lean in on the people side of that. I want to make a positive impact on the people.
Love it. What's a personality trait you've had since childhood that still shows up in your leadership today?
My ability to talk to pretty much anybody. I know.
And I think your like ability to work in a team, because you've been playing sports since you were 5, right?
Yeah.
So you touched on that a little bit earlier.
And it's something I've always adapted well. I've always been somebody who adapts to an environment pretty well. Even if it's outside of my comfort zone, I'm going to find something that I can adapt to. And so it goes back to that team environment. Early on, you deal with a lot of different personalities. You're on a team. Everybody's a little bit different, and you got to all work. Yeah, you got to all work together to like win a game, right? And so, I think that translates into now, and
the competition side of it too, because I feel like someone's gunning for your position, or you're playing into this other team, and so that all comes back to here in the environment that we're in. There's competition, there's threats, and you got to always stay one step ahead.
I'm definitely competitive. I think I'm like a hidden person. Like, more people know now that I try to hide how competitive I can be, because I'm that person that if I go to the gym, I'm probably competing with the person next to me and they have no idea. But in general, that's what keeps me moving, right? It's like motivates me to be better. So I take it as a positive, but definitely that competitive spirit lives in me forever.
If you weren't in marketing, what completely different career do you think you would have chosen? Other than being a professional, volleyball player.
I would own a farm with a lot of different animals.
Nice. Would some of those animals be?
I definitely want some mini cows, some mini Highland
I was
cows.
going to say a fluffy cow.
A fluffy cow, mini, big size, all of the cows in between. I want a variety of animals. I think I would, I'd probably end up making a business out of it. So marketing would probably all come back full
Still
circle.
come out.
But I definitely would have every animal you could think of, farm animal probably, and a lot of dogs on a lot of land. And I'd turn it into some kind of like event place so that I could profit off of the love of being on a farm.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to ask you some personal rapid fire questions. What everyday activity brings you a sense of calm or resets your energy?
So I do like to read. I don't know if I do it daily, but that definitely kind of takes me out of my day to day and puts me into a world that's different and kind of calms me to a different place. Also, we don't get to do this every day. We try to, but my husband and I kind of get home before dinner. So we both try to take at least 30 minutes to have dinner together. I try not to be looking at my phone, just kind of be in the moment. I mean, we're all on our phones all the time and we're looking at screens. And so definitely finding that calm and that disconnect for, even if it's just for a little bit to, connect with your people. Right. And so I try to do that daily for sure.
I think that's been, I've talked to a couple people that's been top of mind is just being intentional with our time, sometimes putting our phones down, not having the TV on, really having those. We talk about how the power of communication and building relationships is important on work and leadership environment. But I think it also goes into our personal life, right? We need to take a moment to connect with people, whether it's people that we love or, forming new relationships and telling them about Yamava, whatever it may be.
I completely agree.
Where would your ideal vacation be?
So I've never been to Europe. I do think I have a lot of family that lives in Germany. And I have kind of an obsession with castles. So I feel like I want to go to Germany. I also want to go to Italy. But I think going over to Europe, kind of making a big trip out of it, hitting up the castles I want to see, tapping into my hobby of photography, and just explore. I love the idea of exploring a new place. And then connecting with family that I haven't really either met or seen in a long time.
And then, you can go off the Amalfi Coast. I know you like being in the water and on the boat, so you can check that off too.
I can't, yes. I was actually looking at like the cruises that go through the rivers of Europe. Yeah. I was like, I could get behind that as well.
Favorite music?
Country. I am a country girl. I do love some good country music, but I love a little bit of everything. That's my favorite. I think those are my favorite kind of concerts to go to. It's just a really fun environment. But, at any given time, I can have, 2000s hip hop on. I can have like 90s rock. Like I do like music in general. But if I had to pick one, it would be country for sure.
And then what's something that's on your bucket list?
Ooh, my bucket list. Probably the trip to Italy. I want to make sure. Yeah. I mean, I say Germany is like the ideal trip, but there's something about Italy that I'm very fascinated with. And I think like that's on the bucket list for sure.
And then I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. When you're not at work and you have your marketing lens on still, what things do you look for? And what captures your eyes when you're out in the real world, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I never turn it off. I think that everything I look at from like a marketing point of view. So if we're driving, I'm looking at all of the billboards. Right? And, yeah. I'm looking at the fonts they use. Why did they use that? I can't see it. Right. I'm looking at, if we're at a baseball game and you get like the book, right? Like what's going on that day. I'm looking at their ads. Like how did they set up? Oh, that's a good ad, right? Like, oh, they did good photography for that. So I think it's constantly, top of mind as I'm going through daily life. Sometimes I send pictures to people that I work with. I'm like, oh, this was a good one. Like, this is a great idea. But I think you just never turn it off, really.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Even like from a communication perspective, when I'm like just looking at presentations or copy, I'm like picking like the things that other people wouldn't even notice.
Definitely.
For some for someone who's considering a career in marketing and they're kind of unsure if that's the direction that they want to go, anything that you would tell them to think about or consider?
So marketing is so incredibly broad. And it's not something I thought about, when I was coming out of college. I'm like, I'm going to do marketing, right? To some extent, right? And so I liked creative, so I went into the creative world. But there's so many different parts of marketing. I would say expose yourself to that. And by different parts, I mean, it's anything from being a creative to the data side
Yeah.
to,
There's something for everyone.
yeah, there is something for everybody. It's almost like a bunch of industries in one industry that I think that really understanding what channels you're looking at and what you would enjoy and exposing yourself to that would be key to kind of knowing where to enter into the marketing world.
And it's funny you say that because I never imagined working in a casino, and then you come to a casino and there's so many different job opportunities that are at your fingertips that you would never even think of until you come to the industry. And then once you're here, if you're like kind of second guessing the direction you want to go, there's so many people you can talk to, so many departments you can go check out. So it's just really a amazing place to be a part of, right?
Oh my gosh. I've had, people come to me that, because I've been here so long, they're like, I think I'm interested in something else. I'm like, I will connect you with so-and-so in this department. Why don't you go shadow for an hour and understand if that's something you want to do? And it is the beautiful thing about working for a casino is, to your point, it's so many different industries in one that really there's a job for everybody if you think about it. And there's something that, like, if you're not super happy with what you're doing, there's probably another department that would interest you. So it's a very unique kind of situation for sure.
No, most definitely. Before I asked you our famous last question, was there anything that we didn't cover that you really want to let people know about?
I don't think so. I know my career has really mostly been in marketing, although I feel like I've touched so many different things while in marketing. I definitely want people to understand that it's okay to pivot. And sometimes those pivots are where you learn the most. Yeah. Even if you make your way back into the industry that you were originally in, I think being open to new things and open to, sometimes it's a lateral move, right? And I do think that keeping yourself open to learning more in those kinds of, in that way, is really helpful. So don't be too narrow-minded when it comes to your career, because you never know what's going to trigger something else. And so, yeah. So I that's one thing I really want to make sure people take away as well.
And I 100% agree, because I went from government to healthcare to now casino, and kind of early in my career put it in the back burner for whatever life was throwing at me. And I also think the other thing is, it's never too late to change careers, never too late to go back to school, and even when you feel like you're settled and in where you should be, you should always be challenging yourself and learning more, right? Because there's so much out there that you don't know about.
Agreed.
Everything is continually evolving. So
I don't think anybody's like, even when I felt like I was ready for the next step, I was still learning in my job, right? And so I think, like, being open to that knowledge and consistently learning while you're doing it is totally key.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so 3 tips you would provide to anyone who wants to take their career to the next level.
So number 1, I would say, is invest in building relationships. I think that's key, really building on relationships. That helps with mentorship. It helps with career growth. It just helps with like collaboration. I think building those relationships is super important. Number 2 would be communicate more than you think you need to. That's where the gaps end up being, is in communication. And so over communicate, make sure people know what's going on. That also helps collaboration, and it also helps build trust. And then number 3 would be to keep learning and actively listening. I think those two kind of go hand in hand for me personally. And if you're open to that continuous learning and listening to people and learning from other people, you're going to be successful.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and have a blessed rest of the day.
Thank you.
Check out more episodes at thenextlevelcareers.com.